Stress-free financial planning. How do you reduce the stress and then have a more comfortable retirement, a worry-free type retirement? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I got to pull this up here, Kevin. This is the book that's kind of influencing the whole conversation. This just came out a few weeks back, called No Worries, How to Live a Stress-Free Financial Life by Jared Dillian. It is a U.S. book, so we're going to take some of the big concepts that are presented in that book, but we're going to discuss them from a Canadian context. So there's going to be a few things that are different. But one of the big concepts, Kevin, that I think is fantastic, that I certainly agree with, is the idea of financial stress is really boiled down to two big pieces. It's going to be the debt and it's going to be the risk. Like the causes of financial stress probably relate to one of those two things in most cases, the level of risk and then the debt. We're going to come back to this. I just want to introduce the concept because this is going to help determine some of the pieces we talk about when we talk about the day-to-day piece of financial planning compared to the kind of the big decisions, right? That's going to be the next concept, is making sure we don't worry about the day-to-day, making sure we get the big things right.
Yeah, and that's the biggest factor. I mean, stress-free financial living, it's not winning the lottery. Okay, this is not what the plan of the whole book is. It's got a variety of different things. And it's getting those big things right. Because, I mean, that's the biggest factor is, as you mentioned, the debt and the risk. So we're not just worrying here about, am I going to go out? Am I going to have lunch somewhere? Am I going to be dealing with getting that coffee? In Canada, when we're starting to talk about a variety of different things, on those big debt pieces, you're looking at a variety of scenarios, such as the car and the house. Those would be big payments you have to deal with. I mean, in the US, in the book, they're starting to deal with college tuitions and stuff like that. It's not as big a deal here in Canada. What we really deal with, though, is that forced savings, putting a money aside. That's another portion of this. I mean, I can remember when you're starting to talk about dealing with big compared to little. I mean, if you're looking at the little thing, I'm on vacation, there's a concert that comes out that I wanted to see sort of scenario. Well, it's not in my budget. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that. Well, in hindsight, you spend that extra $100 or $200 there. Is that really going to pay down my debt? Is it going to be dealing with my car or my mortgage payments? No, not as big a concept that you should worry about. And, if I am worrying about that, I'm going to create a lot more stress in my life. So yeah, the Canadian version is more of that dealing, as you mentioned, the risk and the debt side of things, as long as forced savings being added into that sort of concept.
Yeah, and in the car and the house, talking about the financial stress, the car and house clearly relate to the debt side of the picture. Those are going to be the big debt burdens, which can create a lot of stress, a lot of financial worry. The forced savings is really where that risk part of the equation comes in. But getting the big things right, that was the second concept from the book that we're talking about. It really just changes the focus. Should you be worried when you're buying a house? Yeah, you should put some energy and effort into that to make sure you end up with the right amount of debt. You don't stress yourself and you don't end up taking on a big mortgage that you really can't afford. And now all the extra interest on that large mortgage is going to offset all the little day-to-day items. And that's really the kind of the flip side here from the book, from the typical financial planning advice, the typical kind of financial guru advice is the small changes add up. So it's the idea that, hey, do worry about the coffee. You shouldn't be buying the expensive coffee. You can get it at home, save yourself that $2 and it'll add up to 40 grand by the time you retire. It's saying the opposite. It's saying you worry about the mortgage, you worry about the car, you worry about the forced savings. You don't worry about all the little items because you get the big pieces right. You don't have to worry about all the little pieces. And that creates less stress because you're not thinking about it every day. You're not having to worry every single day, can I afford this coffee? Can I afford to go to lunch? You're changing that mindset, and that helps reduce some of the financial stress. That's kind of like a key premise here of the book. Like you mentioned, some of those big pieces, the car, the house, they call it college loans in the book. We're saying probably forced savings would be a better idea, certainly as it relates to Canada. But those are kind of the big pieces, and we'll go through them here, Kevin. Now that we understand the concept, we'll talk about some of those big pieces. We'll give folks a couple of tips. But first, if they have questions on this or anything else, where should they go?
They should go to chatwithclintonandkevin.com. This is the place where we can sit there and answer the questions that you've got. As we want to say, we want to get a personalized question. We're going to give a personalized answer. That's the way we want to take a look at these things. So by all means, please feel free to give us that, and we'll be happy to get back to you as quickly as we can. Now, when you're dealing with sort of that concept there, as you mentioned, I mean, we're not saying in the car, house, forced savings, if you had a vacation, we're not saying, well, that's a little thing, go out and do 4 or 5 more vacations. We're just saying that if that's the part, just don't stress on it and keep going from there.
Yeah. And then talking about the big pieces, you're talking about the house, you're talking about all those different items. Well, on the house side of things, I get homes are certainly more expensive than they were in the past, but the idea is not to stretch and get the biggest mortgage possible, not to max out your overall debt load. That's really the cause of the stress. And when it comes to the car loan, same idea. Get a car that's practical, one that works for you. If you can afford all the bells and whistles, and then buy one that has all the bells and whistles, but don't push yourself to get that. That's really the concept here, is just trying to minimize the debt as part of their reducing the financial worry, and then trying to maximize the forced savings. talking about forced savings here, Kevin, is building up the nest egg and those automated
That's right.
habits.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're trying to build it as fast as we can. But by the same token, I mean, what do you want to invest it in? If your neighbor's investing in a whole bunch of high risk stuff or looking at Bitcoin, just because he made money last year doesn't mean you're going to make money the next year. And if you're chasing returns, that may not be the ultimate idea that you want to deal with, because what you may be doing is adding more risk into your portfolio than what you really want. So you're going to get that financial stress because you've had a riskier play. And if it doesn't do what you want to do, well, then all of a sudden you're back to that same boat. You're worrying about it every day. Why did I buy this? Why did I buy that scenario? So again, it's not the debt side, but the risk factors in your investments can have a very big effect on what your financial stress level is.
Yeah, we're mentioning here the kind of two big ideas of the book. One is to get the big things right, not worry about the day-to-day pieces. Don't worry about the coffee, the lunch, worry about the car, the house, the forced savings, the rest, less of a concern. If you get those big pictures right, that can help reduce financial stress. And the number two is this kind of equation, if you will, the debt side, which clearly relates to the car and the house, and then the risk side, which relate to those savings. Like you mentioned, on the risk side, you have to avoid getting something that gets you into a higher risk category, or at least beyond your comfort zone, because risk is very much about perspective. What's high risk to me might not be high risk to you. It very much depends on how you look at it. And like you said, the trick there is really to focus on your specific goals, your plan, and have a better understanding of your comfort zone, right? So you kind of put the blinders on. Who cares what the neighbor did? Maybe they got 20%, maybe they lost 30, whatever. Hopefully it works for them and their plan. I'm not going to start to play that game, because then you could end up with a strategy you don't really understand. A strategy perhaps has more risk than you're comfortable with, and now you're creating more financial stress than is required, right? You're giving yourself a little more worry, a little more headache, because you're chasing that extra return that maybe you don't even need that extra return, because your plan, is already on track. So that's the concept there. The big pieces relate to the debt, the forced savings, which relates to the risk. And this is all kind of wrapping up to our Becker Orr motto here, Kevin. You need to have a plan.
You do need to have a plan. Remember, keeping up with the Joneses might be nice, but maybe not be what your plan is. And that's the biggest factor, is you want to deal with your plan. Your plan is personalized to you, and you're the one that has to follow this. So don't worry about the outside noise. We've always tried to eliminate that one. As long as you're dealing in your plan, you should be fine moving forward. This is the concept that we want to preach for it. Other than that, I think we've covered a lot of these concepts to try and help you live a less stressful financial situation and concentrate on the big things.
There's another video on the screen right now, Common Financial Fears, related to similar topics. So if you like this one, you'll certainly like that one. Click on the video. We'll see you again very soon.